Ambassador Thelver had seen many worlds in his 3 centuries of service to the Galactic Council. He had welcomed dozens of primitive species into the great community of civilized peoples. Each time brought in joy, watching young races discover they were not alone in the universe. Each time they looked up at his delegation with wonder and gratitude. This time felt different. His ship hung in orbit above the blue-green world the natives called Earth. The scanner displays showed something that made his blood run cold. War, not the small border disputes or ritual combats that occasionally flared among developing species. Real war. Total war. Ambassador, you need to see this, his aide Kessa said, her voice shaking. She pulled up images from the surface. Cities burning. Massive armies clashing across continents. And then something worse. Much worse. A bright flash filled the screen. Then another. And another. Thelver watched in horror as mushroom clouds rose into the atmosphere. They're using atomic weapons, he whispered. On their own planet. On their own people. The Council had strict rules about first contact. They observed species for years before making themselves known, waiting until the primitives had achieved basic spaceflight and unified government. Earth had neither. But the survey team had been so excited about human potential that they'd recommended early contact. Now, Thelver understood why the final decision had fallen to him. Someone had to see this carnage and decide if humanity deserved to join the galactic community at all. Show me more, he ordered. The images got worse. Humans fought with a ferocity that turned his stomach. They attacked across frozen beaches while their comrades fell around them. They burned entire cities from the air. They fought through the rubble street by street, building by building, room by room. Even when clearly defeated, they kept fighting. How many have died? He asked. In this current war? Preliminary estimates suggest 60 million casualties. Perhaps more. 60 million. The number meant nothing to species that numbered in the hundreds of billions. But Earth's total population was barely 8 billion. Nearly 1% of their entire species. Dead in just a few years of fighting. What are they fighting over? Kessa pulled up intelligence reports. Ideology, mostly. Territory. Resources. One faction believes in racial supremacy and territorial expansion. The others formed an alliance to stop them. And they're willing to destroy their own world to win? It appears so, Ambassador. Thelver made his decision. We make contact. Now, perhaps we can stop this madness before they render their planet uninhabitable. The delegation landed in a place called Washington, in a territory called the United States. The humans had been notified of their arrival, and a greeting party waited on the lawn of an impressive white building. Thelver expected primitives in crude clothing, their eyes wide with shock at meeting beings from the stars. Instead, he found humans in pressed military uniforms, their faces tired but composed. At their head stood an older human male with calculating eyes. "Welcome to Earth," the human said through the translation device. "I am President Truman. We've been expecting you? Expecting them? How could they have been expecting them? We have observed your world for some time." Thelver began carefully. "We represent the Galactic Council, an alliance of 3,000 civilized species spanning the known galaxy. We have come to offer humanity a place among the stars." He waited for the gasps of awe, the tears of joy. Instead, President Truman simply nodded. "That's very kind. We accept, assuming the terms are reasonable. But you've picked an interesting time to visit. We're in the middle of something." "Yes," Thelver said, unable to keep the disapproval from his voice. "We have observed your war. Ambassador, I must tell you, the Galactic Council is deeply concerned by what we have witnessed. The use of atomic weapons. The massive civilian casualties. The absolute brutality of your combat methods. No civilized species. Civilized species. Truman interrupted quietly. Don't face what we're facing. Ambassador, do you know what the enemy in this war was doing? Do you know what we found when we liberated their camps? Thelver hesitated. He had read the reports, but he hadn't wanted to believe them. Industrial-scale murder. Genocide is official policy. Humans breeding and slaughtering their own kind like livestock. We are aware of the atrocities committed by. Then you understand why we fight the way we do, Truman said. You call it brutal. We call it necessary. When you're fighting an enemy who will commit genocide if they win, you use every weapon you have. You sacrifice whatever you must. You do things that will haunt you for the rest of your life. But you do them because the alternative is unthinkable. There are always alternatives to such violence, Thelver insisted. Negotiation. Compromise. The Council has maintained peace for 10,000 years through not having enemies like this, Truman finished. Ambassador, I'm glad you live in a universe where wars can be won through negotiation. I hope someday we'll join you there. But today, right now, we live in a universe where evil exists. Real evil. And it must be stopped. Thelver wanted to argue, but something in the human's eyes stopped him. He had seen those eyes before, in soldiers of every species. The look of someone who had done terrible things for good reasons. The look of someone who would never sleep soundly again. The Council will need to observe you further, Thelver said finally. Your methods are concerning. Observe all you want, Truman replied. Just stay out of our way until this war is finished. After that, we'll gladly talk about joining your council. We'll gladly learn about peace. But first, we have to win. As Thelver returned to his ship, he felt deeply unsettled. Perhaps humanity wasn't ready for the stars. Perhaps they were too violent, too brutal, too willing to embrace horror in pursuit of victory. He filed his report recommending humanity be quarantined for another 1,000 years. Let them mature. Let them learn peace. He would realize his mistake too late. While the Council debated humanity's fate, something else was watching Earth. Something that had conquered 100 worlds. Something that saw humanity's violence not as a warning, but as a challenge. The Devourers were coming. 50 years passed before the Devourers found humanity. 50 years of peace, during which humans had rebuilt their world and reached for the stars. They had colonies on Mars, mining stations in the asteroid belt, and had just sent their first expedition beyond the solar system. Thelver, now retired but still monitoring humanity from afar, felt a chill when the news reached him. The Devourers had entered human space. The Devourers were the nightmare that haunted every Council species. A hive mind that consumed entire civilizations, absorbing their populations into a collective consciousness. They had destroyed 47 worlds in the past 2 centuries. Each time, the Council had debated military action. Each time, they had chosen negotiation, retreat, or appeasement. The Devourers always won. Always. Thelver pulled up the tactical displays. The Devourer fleet had emerged near Proxima Station, humanity's furthest colony. 300 ships against humanity's small garrison of 20. The outcome was inevitable, or so he thought. The human commander, a woman named Admiral Chun, refused to surrender. Instead, she ordered the civilian population to evacuate while her ships positioned themselves in a defensive formation. Thelver watched the battle in real time, transmitted across the Council's observation network. The Devourers attacked with their standard tactics. Overwhelming firepower. Shock and awe. They expected the humans to break and run after losing their first few ships. Admiral Chun did something else entirely. All ships, engage. Her voice crackled across the com. Make them pay for every inch. The human ships charged directly into the Devourer formation. Not retreating. Not maneuvering for advantage. Just attacking with suicidal aggression. 3 human destroyers rammed Devourer cruisers, detonating their reactors on impact. Fighters flew kamikaze runs into capital ships. A damaged human carrier, its crew already evacuated, was piloted on a collision course with the Devourer flagship. It was insane. It was wasteful. It was brutal. It worked. By the time the Devourers destroyed the last human ship, they had lost 60 vessels. Admiral Chun's garrison had inflicted 3-to-1 casualties, despite being vastly outnumbered. The Devourer fleet, meant to sweep through human space, was crippled, but the cost made Thilver sick. 15,000 humans dead. An entire colony abandoned and destroyed to deny it to the enemy. The survivors had blown the fusion reactors, turning the station into a radioactive tomb. Why would they do that? Kessa asked, watching the aftermath. They could have surrendered. The Devourers would have absorbed them into the collective, but at least they would have lived. Thilver thought of President Truman's words from 50 years ago. They call it necessary. The war escalated quickly. The Devourers, enraged by their unexpected losses, committed more forces. Humanity met them at every colony, every outpost, every worthless rock in space. And every time, humans fought with the same desperate ferocity. The Council watched in horror and fascination. Humans used tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They faked surrenders to get close enough for suicide attacks. They booby-trapped their own dead. They hacked Devourer communication networks and broadcast psychological warfare that disrupted the hive mind's coordination. At the Titan mining complex, trapped colonists rigged the methane refineries to explode, taking out a Devourer landing force 10 times their size. At Europa Station, defenders held out for 3 months in the ice tunnels, using guerrilla tactics that bled the Devourers white. Every human defeat became a costly victory for the enemy. The Council convened an emergency session. Thilver, called out of retirement for his knowledge of humanity, stood before the assembly. "We must decide," the Council speaker announced. "Do we support humanity against the Devourers, or do we allow both threats to destroy each other?" "Threats?" Thilver said sharply. "You call humanity a threat? Look at what they're doing," a representative from the Peaceful Brotherhood hissed. "They're fighting with the same brutality as the Devourers. How are they any different?" Thilver pulled up footage from a captured human medical station. "This is how they're different. These are wounded Devourer drones. Humans could have executed them or let them die. Instead, they're treating them, healing them, and more than that, they're trying to free them from the hive mind." The council chamber fell silent as they watched human doctors working on the insectoid Devourer bodies, working to save them. "They're also interrogating them," another representative pointed out, "using techniques we would consider torture. The humans call it the programming," Thilver said. "And it's working. Look at this drone." For the first time in Devourer history, an individual has broken free from the collective. It has its own thoughts, its own will. The humans didn't destroy it. They freed it, while simultaneously destroying entire fleets with ruthless efficiency, the speaker noted. "Yes," Thilver agreed, "because that's what humans are. They will be brutal when they must. They will sacrifice anything to protect the innocent. But they will also show mercy when they can. They are not like us, comfortable in our peace. They are not like the Devourers, mindlessly consuming. They are something in between, something necessary." The council debated for weeks while the war raged on. By the time they voted to provide limited support to humanity, the Devourers had committed their entire military to the conflict. They had never faced real resistance before. They were determined to make an example of humanity. The vote passed by a narrow margin. Too narrow. The support consisted of intelligence sharing and defensive weapons only. No ships, no troops, no real help. Thilver walked out of the council chamber in disgust. Kessa followed him. "What will you do now?" she asked. He looked at the tactical displays. The Devourers were massing for a final assault on Earth itself. Humanity's fleets were battered, their colonies destroyed, their people exhausted. They had fought magnificently, but it might not be enough. "I'm going to do what humans would do," Telver said quietly. "Something necessary." He contacted Admiral Chun directly. "Admiral, I'm coming to join your fleet. I'm bringing every ship and volunteer I can gather. It won't be much, but it's something." There was a long pause. Then Chun's voice, thick with emotion. "Ambassador, you'll be violating every council law. You'll be exiled, branded a criminal." "I know," Felver said. "A human once told me that sometimes you have to do things that will haunt you forever. But you do them anyway, because the alternative is unthinkable." I finally understand what he meant. "Then welcome to the war," Chun said. "And thank you." Felver gathered his loyal followers. 14 ships. A handful of council species who believed in humanity's cause. It was nothing compared to the vast fleets clashing across human space. But sometimes, nothing was better than watching from the sidelines. As his small fleet jumped toward Earth, Felver wondered if he was making the right choice. Then he remembered the human doctors treating their enemies. The colonists who died buying time for civilians to escape. The admiral who thanked him even as her world burned. He was doing what was necessary. Just like the humans had taught him, the Devourer Armada arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a swarm of locusts. 2,000 ships. The largest fleet they had ever assembled. They came to end humanity once and for all, to punish the species that had dared resist the collective. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the UN's Indomitable, humanity's flagship. Around her, holographic displays showed the grim mathematics of the coming battle. Earth's combined fleets numbered 600 ships. With Felver's reinforcements, they had 614. "They outnumber us more than 3 to 1, her tactical officer said quietly. "They always have," Chum replied. "Hasn't stopped us yet." She opened a channel to all ships, human and alien alike. "This is Admiral Chun to all vessels. In a few hours, the Devourers will attack. They expect us to run. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to die quietly, like every other species they've conquered." She paused, letting the silence hang. "They're wrong. We will fight them here, at humanity's doorstep. We will make them pay for every ship, every life, every inch of space. We will show them that humanity does not surrender, does not break, does not quit. And to our new allies, who came knowing they would be exiled from the council, who chose to stand with us anyway, I say thank you. Today, we are all brothers and sisters. Today, we all fight for the same thing. The right to exist. The right to be free. The right to determine our own destiny." Dover listened from his own command ship and felt something he had never expected to feel. Pride, not in his own species. Safe and comfortable in their distant worlds. Pride in these violent, stubborn, magnificent humans. The Devourers attacked at dawn. Earth's time. They came in waves, their ships moving with the eerie coordination of the hive mind. No hesitation, no fear. Just cold mechanical efficiency. Chan's fleet met them head-on. The first engagement was brutal. Human ships used every dirty trick they had learned. They deployed clouds of small mines that confused Devourer sensors. They used focused electromagnetic pulses to disrupt hive communications. They sacrificed damaged vessels as kinetic weapons, ramming them into enemy formations. "Carrier Group Delta is gone," the tactical officer reported. "They took 40 Devourer ships with them. Mark their names," Chun said quietly. "We'll remember them." The battle raged for hours. Space filled with debris and radiation. Human ships fell by the dozens, but they inflicted terrible casualties on the enemy. Every Devour ship destroyed was one less threat to Earth. Every minute of delay bought time for civilian evacuation ships to escape the system. Then, Thelver saw something that made his heart stop. The Devourers were moving a massive vessel toward Earth, a planetary bombardment ship. If it got in range, it could render the surface uninhabitable in minutes. All ships, priority target, Chine's voice crackled. That bombardment ship cannot reach Earth. Half the human fleet turned to intercept. Thelver did the same with his small force. They threw everything at the massive vessel. Missiles, kinetic rounds, suicide runs. The bombardment ship's shields held, and it kept moving forward. Chun made a decision that Thelver knew would haunt her forever. UNS Indomitable to all ships. I'm ramming the bombardment vessel. All crew, evacuate to escape pods immediately. Admiral No, her tactical officer protested. There has to be another way. There isn't, Chun said calmly. And someone has to do it. Get to the pods. That's an order. Thelver watched as the crew evacuated. Chun stayed at the helm, piloting the massive flagship directly toward the enemy vessel. At the last moment, she opened a final channel. This is Admiral Chun to all human forces. Keep fighting. Keep hoping. Keep protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us worth saving. Earth survives. Humanity survives. That's all that matters. The Indomitable struck the bombardment ship at a significant fraction of light speed. The explosion lit up the solar system like a second sun. When the light faded, both ships were gone. The battle turned. The Devourers, having lost their bombardment capability and taken staggering casualties, began to waver. For the first time in their history, the hive mind experienced something like doubt. Then humanity did something unexpected. A message broadcast on all frequencies. Not a demand for surrender. An offer. Devourer Collective, this is humanity. We know you're listening. We know you're feeling your first real losses. We know you're wondering if this conquest is worth the cost. The voice belonged to a young human diplomat named Rivira. We're going to give you a choice you've never given anyone else. Surrender, and we'll help you. We'll break the hive mind's control. We'll free your drones to live as individuals. We'll give you the chance to exist as a true civilization instead of a parasite. Thelver stared at the transmission in disbelief. They were offering mercy. After everything the Devourers had done. After all the human dead. They were offering mercy. This is your only chance, Rivera continued. Reject it, and we'll fight until one of us is extinct. We've proven we're willing to do that. We've proven we're capable of it. But we'd rather not. We'd rather save you. Even from yourselves. Especially from yourselves. The Devourer response came after a long silence. Not words. Just a renewed attack, more vicious than before. So be it, Rivera said quietly. The human fleet revealed weapons they had been holding in reserve. Relativistic kill missiles that struck with planet-cracking force. Antimatter warheads. Weaponized artificial intelligence that infiltrated and corrupted Devourer systems. Things that made Thelver understand why the Council had feared humanity. But even as they unleashed devastation, human rescue ships continued pulling Devourer survivors from destroyed vessels. Continued treating the wounded. Continued trying to free drones from the collective. They offered mercy first, Thelver whispered to Kessa. They gave the Devourers every chance. Only when that was refused did they use these weapons. Is that supposed to make it better? Kessa asked, horrified by the destruction. No, Thelver said. It makes it necessary. The battle raged for 3 more days. By the end, the Devourer fleet was shattered. Of 2,000 ships, fewer than 300 remained, and those were fleeing the system. Humanity had won, but the cost was staggering. 400 human ships destroyed, 60,000 crew dead, Admiral Chun among them. Mars colony damaged by Devourer bombardment. The asteroid belt littered with wreckage. And yet, as Thelver looked at the tactical display, he saw something remarkable. The evacuation ships had all escaped. Earth itself was untouched. And on his own ship, in the medical bay, 36 free Devourer drones were learning what it meant to think for themselves. Was it worth it? Kessa asked. Thelver thought of Admiral Chun, ramming the enemy ship to save her world. Of President Truman, doing terrible things to stop greater evil. Of all the humans who had fought and died not for conquest or glory, but simply to protect the innocent. Ask the 2 billion civilians who escaped, he said softly. Ask the free Devourer drones. Ask Earth, still spinning peacefully below us. Yes, it was worth it. The Galactic Council convened 6 months after the Battle of Seoul. The Grand Chamber, usually a place of calm deliberation, buzzed with tension. At the center stood 3 humans in formal diplomatic attire. Behind them, Thelver waited to give testimony about his actions during the war. The council speaker, an ancient being whose species had helped found the Alliance millennia ago, looked down at the humans with unreadable eyes. Humanity has requested full membership in the Galactic Council. The speaker began. This body must decide if a species that wages war with such brutality deserves a place among civilized peoples. Ambassador Rivara, who had offered mercy to the Devourers even as Earth burned, stepped forward. She was young by human standards, barely 40, but she had aged during the war. They all had. Honored council members, she said. We understand your concerns. We know what you saw. The weapons we used, the tactics we employed, the terrible things we did in the name of survival. We're not asking you to excuse those things. We're not even asking you to understand them. We're asking you to recognize why they were necessary. A representative from the Peaceful Brotherhood rose. You speak of necessity, yet you violated every principle of civilized warfare. You used false surrenders. You booby-trapped your dead. You employed weapons that cause unnecessary suffering. You're right, Rivara said simply. We did all of that. Because the alternative was extinction. Not just for humanity. For every species, the Devourers would have conquered after us. How many worlds did the Council allow them to consume while you debated and negotiated? 47, wasn't it? The chamber fell silent. It was a number that haunted every council member. We stopped them, Rivara continued. Yes, we used brutal methods, but we also offered them mercy. We gave them a chance to surrender and be freed from the hive mind. Most refused. Some accepted. Those individuals are now living on Earth, learning to be people instead of drones. Can any council species say they've done the same? Another representative spoke up. What about the Devourers who are still out there? Your fleet destroyed their main force, but scattered elements remain. They're raiding unprotected systems, creating chaos. A human military officer stepped forward. General Park, who had commanded the defense of Mars colony. We're hunting them down, every remnant of the Hive fleet. Not to exterminate them, but to break their control and free the drones. It's slow work, dangerous work, but it's necessary work, and if they refuse to be freed? The council speaker asked. What then? Park met the speaker's gaze without flinching. Then we do what we must. We don't want to. We'd rather save them. But we won't let them terrorize innocent species, just because killing them troubles our conscience. Sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to destroy those who would harm them. Thelver had been silent until now, but he felt compelled to speak. Council Speaker, if I may. Ambassador Thelver, you stand accused of violating council law by joining humanity's war. You face exile and the stripping of your rank. Yet you request to speak? I do, Thelver said, stepping forward. I spent 50 years observing humanity. I thought I understood them. I thought they were too violent for civilized society. I was wrong. He pulled up footage from the Battle of Seoul. Look at this. Admiral Chun, moments before she died saving Earth. She could have ordered someone else to make that sacrifice. She chose to do it herself. Look at this. Human medics treating wounded Devour drones even as the battle raged above them. Look at this. The offer of surrender, giving the Devourers one last chance even after everything they'd done. Thelver faced the council. Humanity isn't too brutal for civilization. They're exactly what civilization needs. Someone willing to do the hard things, to make the terrible choices, to carry the burden of violence so that others don't have to. They don't enjoy it. They don't take pride in it. But they do it when they must, and they show mercy when they can. Pretty words, the Peaceful Brotherhood representative said, but they don't change what humanity is. A warrior species, violent, dangerous. Yes, Thelver agreed. They are all of those things. But they're also doctors and teachers, artists and scientists, parents and children. They're complicated, just like any species. The difference is that when evil comes for them, they don't debate. They don't negotiate. They don't hide behind rules and procedures. They fight. And sometimes, the rest of us need people willing to fight. The council debated for hours. Arguments raged back and forth. Some wanted to reject humanity entirely. Others wanted to accept them with restrictions. A few, inspired by Thelver's words, argued for full membership. Finally, the speaker called for silence. We have heard all arguments. Now we must decide. Not just about humanity's membership, but about what kind of council we wish to be. One that values peace above all else, or one that values justice and protection of the innocent, even when that requires violence. The vote was close. Closer than any in council history. But in the end, humanity was accepted. Not unanimously, not enthusiastically, but accepted. As the chamber emptied, General Park approached Thelver. Thank you, Ambassador, for everything, for believing in us, for fighting with us, speaking for us. I only spoke the truth, Thelver said. Though it cost me my position and my reputation among many council species. Was it worth it? Park asked. Thelver smiled. It was a question humans seemed to ask a lot. Yes, though I wonder what President Truman would say if he could see this day. The man who told me humanity would gladly learn about peace, but first had to win their war. He'd probably say we have a lot to learn, Park replied. And he'd be right. We're not proud of what we did. We'll carry those memories forever. The people we killed, the weapons we used, the choices we made. But we'd do it all again if we had to, because the alternative was worse. Rivera joined them. The Council wants us to help establish a mutual defense pact. Use our experience to train other species in defensive warfare. They want humanity to be the Council's shield. How do you feel about that? Thelver asked. Honestly? Conflicted. We don't want to be defined by our capacity for violence. But if we can use that capacity to protect others, to prevent what happened to those 47 worlds from happening again, then maybe it gives meaning to what we did. Maybe it makes the cost worthwhile. Thelver looked at these two humans, young by his species standards, scarred by war, burdened by terrible memories, but still hoping, still believing in something better. I think President Truman would be proud, he said finally. You won your war. Now you're learning about peace, just like he said you would. Years later, when Thelver wrote his memoirs, he would spend pages on that first meeting with Truman. On the moment, he realized humanity was different. But he would end with the speech General Park gave to the First Joint Council Defense Force, training to face threats the old council would have negotiated with. "You'll hear people call our methods brutal," Park told the recruits, many of them from species that had never known war. "They're right. War is brutal. Violence is brutal. Taking a life is brutal. But sometimes brutality is necessary to protect the innocent. The key is knowing when to fight and when to show mercy, when to be hard and when to be gentle, when to destroy and when to save. That's what we'll teach you. Not how to be warriors, how to be guardians, how to do terrible things for good reasons, and how to live with the weight of those choices."